running for the 137th district here in Monroe County. I'm here with Mercedes Vazquez Simmons, who is running for that position. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, and thank you for carving out time from your busy schedule to chat.
Yes, so we got a handful. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
But we're going to start on what inspired you to run.
Right. So, a little bit about me. I'm the daughter of a civil rights activist, the late Doña Belén Colón, who fought alongside Minister Florence and many of the civil rights leaders in our community in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. So I was brought up in this fight. In the 2020 election, I saw some inequities with the voting. In fact, many elderly people were, denied their right to vote, and many people within the district that's in the 14605, 14621, their right to vote was compromised, and that sort of it angered me. My mother fought for it in the 60s and 70s, and here we are in the 2020 election, and we're experiencing the same thing. But what didn't feel right for me is that it was our people that were at the leadership. So there's no excuse for it. We need to do better as members of our community that want to take leadership, right, leadership role, to not forget about the people that we serve. So that's what got me interested in politics back when I ran for the legislature, and didn't have political background, but what I did is the will to want to change. So I went door to door and won, not one, but 2 terms in the legislature. I've noticed that as a legislator, many of the things that sort of kind of hold us down as a community come from the state level. So I've had conversations with some of our assembly and state senators, and I was met with resistance, which I was surprised. I was surprised. Why am I meeting resistance when we all serve the same community? We should all be hearing the same thing. And I learned quite a bit from that experience, that perhaps people come into office with great intentions, but somewhere along the line, the system takes them, and all of a sudden they're not the voice of the people. So I want to change that. I want to be true to who my community is. I was born and raised in the city. How are we worse off than we were 10 years ago? That really is the fundamental question when it's us in leadership.
Rochester has a housing crisis. Many people are struggling to find homes. People are losing their homes. As you are running for this position, what will you do to change the outcomes of people who are suffering in the housing crisis that we have here in Rochester?
Sure. Well, this is multi-layered, right? Because we have to talk a little bit about the minimum wage. So we have to talk about the cost of living in the city and what causes it to excel. It's something about COVID. Something fundamentally happened during COVID. Everything went up. All of a sudden, the demand went up. And there's many factors. People say it was the immigrants. Some people say it was the housing stock. But here's the reality. We really haven't changed much. We have an aging housing stock that we've abandoned. There's tons of houses in this city that we really need to go back and reinvest. We also have to look at perhaps putting some type of parameters on what we're able to charge in the city, where the median income, particularly in this area, where it doesn't exceed $20,000 a year. So what's happened is we've caused this crisis. This was self-imposed crisis that we're having. We have to go back to the drawing board and have conversations about that. Great that now there's a program now through Medicaid, and kind of that makes me a little leery too, when you see programs that offer 6 months of free rent, where that money, you have to wonder, where's that money coming from? And is it really truly intended, being used for its intended purpose, which is to serve those who are on Medicaid and able to get those assistance? So that's such a multifaceted question, but there's ways to remedy it. There's also dollars at the state level to help individuals that live under the poverty line. I don't know if you've been following the news, but SNAP is soon coming to a major change, March 1st, that if you're a willing and able body, you have to go out there and work. You may still get SNAP subsidies. So that's going to change the lives of many and maybe increase the homeless crisis that we have in our city. I've had the honor of working with Sister Grace Miller, who was the mother of homeless, the unhoused individuals. I've never seen the crisis as it's been today. Prior to her passing, we talked a little bit about the impact that policies make at the local level. So the housing crisis that we have are policy changes and modifications that happen at the federal and state and federal level. The way government works, everything trickles down from the federal to the state to the county to the city. So we're just seeing an adverse effect of some of the policy changes that were made that impact the day-to-day person. That's why every level of election is important. Go out. There's an election every year, and we should be exercising our right to vote.
Absolutely. Now, Rochester has a severe homeless problem. You're seeing people out who are homeless, people are again struggling. What is it that you're going to do to change that situation? We hear still homeless areas that are being moved around by the city, but people are still struggling to find accessibility, shelters, and et cetera are overflowing. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yep. So I had the honor of working with Sister Grace Miller for several years. And just recently, we opened up a shelter right here on West Main Street, right up the street from where this office sits. And that houses 30 people. And every night we're at capacity. We've had a homeless crisis for quite some time. Now it's at a level it's alarming. Quite frankly, I think it's a human rights issue that we're having now. And we should really treat it as such. As a health emergency that's happening in our city. I've never seen this level of homelessness, and it's concerning, but this is a domino effect that's happening. Many of the individuals that I work with on a day-to-day basis have a job, but can no longer afford rent. And we're gonna see it again, we're gonna see an increase of it March 1st, when those that were qualified for SNAP are no longer qualified. And I think we should be doing more. Just recently, I held a resume writing and employment readiness workshop just to prepare individuals for that transition. Now, ideally, we don't want this to happen, but the reality is it's going to happen. So how do we prepare individuals to face this crisis that we're having so that they're not left out on the streets? So a couple of things we need to do. We do have to increase capacity for our homeless shelter, but that's not the answer. The answer is to uplift individuals from these shelters into permanent homes. Having housing, I'm a firm believer that housing is a human right, but we have to empower our community to seek a higher ground, if you will. Let me help you help yourself by providing tools, not necessarily dependent on government. Now, there's individuals that will need to. If you have children, if you have handicaps, or if you're a veteran, we need to make sure that they're taken care of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A man was just released after having the police pursue. He was on parole. He was found with a gun and then later released by a city court judge. What is it that you're able or going to try to do to try to stop that? I mean, people are saying there needs to be a change to bail reform because you have people who are getting out like that who he did shoot at his ex-girlfriends or girlfriend's home, had a police chase, injured somebody, crashed into government property, and a range of charges, and now he's back on the streets today with another warrant. What is it that you're going to do to try to change that outcome, to try to protect victims?
Yeah, that was an alarming case. And I received countless number of calls. The community's outraged by it. And when you see that judges are not using discretion, we lack a seriousness standard. A standard that says, as a judge, you are given a bandwidth to say, should this person have bail, should they not? They have that within their jurisdiction to do that. Now, in this case, they're saying, well, they have about 140 hours to look at this case. Well, I think if this individual has already proven that he's a danger to society, that we should use that discretion and hold him until we're able to do our due diligence. And again, I believe in people, they're innocent until proven guilty, but this person is clearly in need of probably additional support and should have been held. Sadly, we're seeing this in our communities, where individuals are running out in our communities and, creating havoc. Victims become victims again. And that's why people are not speaking up, because they don't want to continue to be victimized in this process. I sit in a committee called Consortium for Better and Safer Communities, and it talks a little bit about that. What does bail reform? What does that mean for our communities? Now, I'm not saying let's do away with bail reform, but I think we need to revisit it. We need to revisit it because it's too broad. It was broadly designed to say if you're not able to financially pay for bail, then you should be released. No, there needs to be another standard to say how probable are you to commit another crime, and how probable are you to not return back. And what's happening, many of them are not coming back, and that's why they're able to commit these crimes. So we have to revisit it. I had countless conversations with our assembly folks and our senators just to talk a little bit about that, and again was met with resistance. Sadly, my family's a victim of this. My uncle, who was a law-abiding citizen, an elderly gentleman, he has been assaulted by a man multiple times. The man had been arrested several times, yet he was released. And this is after our family begged and pleaded with the judge, please don't release him. My uncle was brutally murdered. He was stabbed over 15 times. This is a man that weighed less than 100 pounds. So if you can see why this is so personal, this is, I'm passionate about this. And the victims, again, it seems like no one cares about the victims. And it's time that we change this narrative. It's not about punishing communities, it's about holding folks accountable. I work at Franklin High School, or Bradija High School, and every day I'm having conversations with youth about decision making. Every decision that you make has a consequence, and as they get older, they're going to be held to those. And it's shocking to them because as a juvenile, you're kind of released. You're released to your parents and hope that you do better. But there's nothing that sort of kind of navigates them to let's be better. What are opportunities that we can provide you that will lead you to a life outside of crime? So there's things as a community we've got to do better, and we've moved away from that. We used to have a community that cared about their youths. I loved when grandmas were sitting on their porch. But guess what? Now grandma's afraid and is not sitting on her porch. Not only is she going to be a victim of crime, but if she speaks up, now she's going to be a target. And she's not protected. So as a community, we have to do better. And we have to hold our lawmakers accountable too.
3 police officers were shot. This is before the year began. This was in cahoots with the domestic violence issue.
Yes.
What is it that you want to change to protect domestic violence victims? Domestic violence, they say crime is down, but domestic violences have risen, burglaries have risen. What is it that you're going to do to protect the victims of domestic violence where this doesn't continue to occur? Yeah. We see multiple incidences where people are being shot at or shot because of domestic violence.
Right. Victims continue to be victimized in this community. And that's something that absolutely has to change. Order of protection is just a paper. And it's sad where women and men, right, that are impacted by domestic violence don't feel protected by that paper. So we have to really just use that paper and own it. We have laws. Laws are great, but if they're not enforced, then it's not worth the paper that they're written on. And the same holds for order of protection. If a person violates that order of protection, then they should be put in jail for the violation. But what happens is they're given a pass. They're allowed to continue to violate. In that case, that person had violated that order of protection and nothing was done. That could have prevented that entire encounter. And sadly, there were casualties because of it. But that is a prime example of how systems have failed women and people impacted by domestic violence. So I'd look to change laws where it would hold, the perpetrators responsible for their crime.
Absolutely. There's a topic that's going on around the community right now. Things are way too high. RG&E is continuing to put the rates up for people and pricing out. Businesses have closed because they can no longer afford to pay for the RG&E. I spoke to business owners before this interview, and they expressed frustration. We have to go out of business. We have to cut employees. We have to cut jobs. This is affecting the community because they're trying to survive and pay RG&E. What is it that you want to change or regulate with that issue in RG&E?
Well, great question. This is one that I get every single day, and more so when they're saying, I'm not able to pay my RG&E bill because it's $500, $600, and I'm never home because I'm working all day or have multiple jobs. First and foremost, I wouldn't take money from the utility. You, as a public servant, as an elected official, can't truly advocate if you're taking money from RG&E or Avangard. We would look at different ways of doing this. There's policies that have been written and approved that this is a result of this. Again, policies at the state level impact us. There are policies that were agreed upon by both Democrats and Republicans that would allow for this hike to increase. And I would absolutely encourage folks to look at the political financial records of many of the elected officials and see where they're getting some of their political campaign dollars from. You'll be alarmed to find that it's the same people that harm our communities that they're allowing allow this abuse to continue because they're being paid to just sort of kind of silence. I refuse to be silenced by anyone. I refuse to be bought. I think it's important that your elected official hold ground when it comes to concerns that are critical to our community. Again, RG&E isn't going to go anywhere, but what we can do is hold them accountable and hold our elected officials accountable to fight for us. RG&E is a crisis right now. Our energy bills, there's so many people, they're going to be losing power soon. As a current legislator, this is something that I fought for. We fought to push for independent study that would see what are some of the options that we can pursue as an alternative to RG&E. Sadly, that was voted down. Just wasn't Republicans that voted down. Democrats had some of my peers on the Democratic side also voted against this. And it's troubling. We hope to bring this back to legislation, to the legislative office, and see if we can get another vote on it. Because again, this isn't a matter of popularity. This is what does the community want? I don't need to gain points for anything else. What does the community want? I'm in the community. I feel the pinch. I've gotten those RG&E shut-off notices too, because it's difficult for us to manage it. But I can't put a blind eye to what's happening in our community.
Absolutely. Taxes are continuing to rise every single year, especially here in the city of Rochester, where, once again, business owners are being taxed out, can't afford to pay for taxes, can't afford to put food on the table. What is it that you want to implement to try to hold the taxes at bay?
Yep. Well, I think New York State as a whole can do better with small businesses. Our city of Rochester needs to be a little bit more business friendly. We have businesses that they have their permits and everything else to get established here on hold. So we have to do better of just process. When we welcome businesses into this area, are we really welcoming them? Making sure that our process is, let's get them wrapped up in our communities, hiring locally, paying for some of our local dollars. Several years back, you and I had a conversation about the property assessments. That was a big one. I was one of very few elected officials that were fighting against this. Property assessments blew up, skyrocketed, and that had a net result of increased taxes. We were muted, at least they attempted to mute us on this fight of educating our community to fight back. Now, sadly, the city board did move forward with those property tax increases, and it's unfortunate because these are folks that are in our community that took a vow to protect our citizens, yet we did it. We did it, and folks are being priced out of their houses. This is the type of government overreach that we should be resisting. We shouldn't have allowed that to happen. We see all throughout different towns in our area that resisted, and they had to put a hold on it. I'll tell you a story about Gates, the town of Gates. It was shortly after the election, 2 days to be exact, they voted on a close to 20% rate increase. Now homeowners in Gates are outraged. But this is something that happened. Property assessments occurred, tax went up, and now they're having to deal with it. I can't imagine now having to pay $2,000, $3,000 more a year for property taxes, and nothing's changed in your community. So these are conversations that we need to, as elected officials, inform our community. Again, when you and I spoke, I'm a representative at the county level, but because I represent the city, I made sure the city knew and understood what does this mean for you, and you should be at city council asking your elected official to vote against it. So as an elected official, it's awareness, making sure that the community knows what's coming down the pipeline, and that their vote and their voice matters. It's important that people exercise their right, not only to the vote, but their voice. Go
Yeah.
down, become civically engaged, understand what's happening at the local level because it impacts you the most, the city level, the county level. We meet the first Tuesday of every month here at 39 West Main Street. I encourage everyone to come down to those meetings and see what's happening in our communities. Now, I try to update as many people as possible. I have what I call subs town hall, which is I go to different wash house, if you will, the laundromats, and have conversations with the day-to-day people to say, here's what's happening. You know, would you like to come to the county office and voice your opinions? And people are often surprised of what's happening.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to the Rochester City School District, who are closing schools left and right, changing things, but continues to cut things when they have a large budget. What is it that you, at the state level, would try to manage that type of funding, but still having negative impacts?
Sure. You know, this is one of those crises, you see it, and it's almost like people want to put a blind eye to what's happening. Let me just tell you that it's troubling that we're about a 70% absentee. That right there, we should be ringing the bell. I know I've been out in communities saying, where are our children? Literally, I have a banner, a leaflet that says, where are our children? Because if 70% of our kids aren't in school, where are they? So as a community, I put the call out to our community to say, we've got a crisis here. But you're right, we have a budget, an increasing budget. Year after year, that budget increases, yet the outcome is on the opposite side. Less and less of our children are graduating, less of our children are proficient in reading, right, in mathematics. That's problematic. I teach at Franklin High School, at Padilla High School, and I see the discrepancies that happen when we have children that are coming in without Chromebooks, and these are issued by the city school district. And here it is, we're now entering, February, well, we're mid-February, and we still have kids without Chromebooks. That's a problem. We can't expect them to be successful if we're not providing them with the tools.
Absolutely.
We can't expect them to be successful if we're not providing them with the necessary resources. Like some of them do require additional support, and that's lacking in many of our schools. But as a state representative that approves this budget, I would be vigilant about outcomes. There has to be an outcome. When you see things going astray, we have to stop and say what's happening and how are we fixing it. That conversation hasn't happened. If you ever been to a school board meeting, that is very troubling because the dysfunction within the structure on the school board is what the net result is in a classroom. When you see children that are not performing at their school, at their grade level, yet New York state law says that we can continue just to let them until their senior year, and then we deliver the biggest setback. You're not going to graduate because you have 1 credit hour. How does that work? Why did we let them pass 9th grade if they weren't proficient at the 9th grade level? So systematically, we are broken. We are broken. The way the structure is, that is the pipeline to prison. And it has to change. We need a complete overhaul change to the educational system as it exists today. There is no reason why our children are not in school. There is no reason why we don't have certified teachers in each classroom. The budget now, if you're looking at the budget, it almost talks a little bit about transitioning individuals from being certified to being substitute teachers, to being teacher's aide. And I'm not trying to discredit anyone. I work as a substitute. I have a master's degree in business, so I have an MBA. It's not the same. It's not the same. And that quality that the students should be getting, that we as taxpayers are paying for, simply isn't there. But I don't see anyone being outraged by it. I'll add something onto it. Again, I mentioned that I'm an educator with the Rochester City School District. This debacle with the payroll system has folks leaving. We are going to have a major teachers crisis, if you will, because we're not going to have anyone there. Imagine my first, you're not getting your first month's check. So what does that do to you as an educator? What keeps you there when you have RG&E that you have to pay? You have rent, you have everything else. These are some of the issues that we're facing. I personally was kicked off the pension program. How does that happen? My medical was everything. It was combined issues that were occurring that became a crisis in my life. So how do I fix this? And I have to advocate for the other teachers too to say, what's happening here and how do we fix this? Now there's a lot of finger pointing at the Rochester City School District, even with the unions. That has to stop. Fix it. And every day, these educators are coming into our school systems to teach. Let's not add any barriers for them to continue to stay with this. In fact, now there's this push to just request a transfer. I refuse to leave the school that I'm in at this school year. I refuse to do that because our kids need us there. The school that I'm a reference to has, the highest level of poverty levels, the highest level of absentee, but we're working on how do we remedy that? How do we fix this so that there's a level of hope in our schools?
Some people would say, why don't you work with Demond Meeks instead of running against him? We see that a lot in the community. Yeah. Talk about your mission and why you wanted to run against him instead of working with him.
Sure. Well, Demond and I ran together several years ago, and I thought we were all on the same page, but it appears that we're not. When you can't even speak to your own elected official, because he is also my representative, it becomes, problematic. I've reached out to him on a number of occasions, and we just don't see eye to eye on what I think the community priorities are, and what he feels the community priorities are. I don't think he's a bad person, but I just don't think that he is listening to what the community is asking him for.
Absolutely. I want to go ahead and go a little bit deeper before we end here, because I do have a few more questions. We want to talk about the economy here in Rochester, New York, where things are they're not affordable anymore. Mm-hmm. I can't even afford, some families are saying I can't even afford bread here in the state. I can't afford to pay for gas. I just can't afford the simple, basic necessities. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about that?
Well, we have to, affordability is a national issue, right? It's on everyone's footprint and everyone's conversation. But locally, there's a lot that we can do. We can improve the business climate. Right now, many businesses are closing because Rochester has high taxes. It's not business friendly in the city of Rochester. We could talk about utilities, the hike in RG&E, and working towards legislation that will improve that by offering other options as source of fuel for us. We could also, there's many factors that impact affordability, but everything's driven by policy. So it's important that our elected official is looking at every single bill that's in front of them to say, how does this directly impact our community? Housing stock is a crisis. The governor has made it a priority to build more homes, but we also have an aging stock here that's been abandoned. I would make legislation to focus on that aging stock and get those homes back in order so that we can put families in there.
Some people will say, will you communicate with the mayor of Rochester to try to make things better for them? Because you're at the state level, he's at the city level. So how will you be able to work with him?
Sure, there has to be a partnership. Nothing works in silo, no one can work in a silo, and the mayor is dependent on the state for funding. So it's important that we have an open line of communication and a partnership. It's one city and one county, and it's important that we focus on that and let go of all the egos.
What is something important you want to tell voters that they should know about you? You've been living here in the city of Rochester, you work here, you do business here. Yes. These are your neighbors. So what would you tell the voters? Why do you deserve their vote?
Well, I would tell the voters that it's important that your elected official is present. I am present in this community. I am with you at all step of the way, and I am part of this community. I was born and raised in Rochester to a civil rights activist who fought a good fight. I continue that fight. I continue the fight that the Sister Graces of the world have fought. I will continue fighting the fight when it comes to civil matters, when it comes to human rights. I'm there. I'm present. Why? I care. I genuinely and authentically care. I've had jobs that paid over, the six-figure. I choose to work in education because I see the crisis. I'm a roll-up-the-sleeve type of person to say if there's a crisis, I want to be there to help remedy it. Anyone can go on social media and complain about whatever they want to complain about, but what are the actions attached? We have a crisis with youth. I opened up a youth center on North Clinton Avenue to help address it. We have an absentee crisis. I'm boots on the ground trying to get parents to get their children back into school. If going to school physically isn't an option, let's do remote learning. Let's get you set up with that. We could talk about crisis with businesses. I work with businesses on a day-to-day basis. In North Clinton Avenue, when they shut down the businesses without letting them know, it was just from one day to another, effective immediately, you have to close your business on the most busiest weekend for them. So we worked with businesses. We tried working with the mayor to keep those the Avenida opened during the Puerto Rican Festival weekend, and we were unsuccessful. But we now have an open dialogue with the community, with the mayor, to say, before you make any decisions on our city, could you at least have a conversation with the businesses and see how we can work around it and find a happy medium, if you will. And then RG&E, I have worked to get an alternate supplier for us or look at different solutions for us. And my vote was for it. But we have to, as a collective, hold our elected officials responsible. Even something as simple as free calls to our incarcerated individuals. Sadly, many Democrats voted against it. These are our community members and our family members here locally that now have to pay for those calls when statewide they're able to get free calls. So there's a lot of things that we do on a day-to-day basis. But I'll tell you that every vote matters, and every vote has consequences. So when you're opening up your RG&E bill, I want you to know that I fought for this not to be this way. Whereas, the person, the incumbent now, voted for it to happen. So when you open up your bill, I want you to think about who really is the cause of your bill being the way they are. And it's unfortunate.
Young voters.
Yes.
They're not coming out to vote as much. Mm-hmm. It says and here in Monroe County, the average age for a voter who doesn't vote is ages 18 to 27 years old. They don't come out and vote. How are you going to get them to vote? How are you going to get them the message?
Right. So we created our youth caucus, if you will, within this campaign team. Our youth are being out there evangelizing the word, if you will, about some of the changes that are necessary that are going to impact them. Many are, I want to say he's 19 years old, and he leads a large team of youth that talk about issues that are important to them: education, crime, and housing stability is something that they're most concerned about and that they're going to be working with. I work closely with young people all day, every day. I hear some of their concerns, and I see the impact that decisions that are made by adults have on them on a day-to-day basis. I love what I do. I love what I do, and I do it I barely make ends myself. But this is a sacrifice that I'm willing to make for the community that I love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to come to a close.
Yes.
What do you want to say to the people here in Monroe County that are looking at this and say, I don't know who to choose between you or Demond?
Well, I would say that if you're happy with the status quo, then continue doing the status quo. But if you're angry about RG&E, if you're angry about the rent increases, if you're angry about anything, then you have to change. You have the power with that vote to change. My mother said one thing: we are the wealthiest. We are all the same wealth at the poll. Value your right to vote. Value it, because many people that I talk to, they're like, I don't vote anymore because my vote doesn't matter. Your vote absolutely matters. In the Black and brown community, we fought for this. It's our blood and tears that allowed us the ability to vote. We need to exercise that vote. But if you're angry about anything, if you're angry about what's happening today, you could only thank the elected officials that are there at the state level for the crisis that we're experiencing, everywhere from homelessness to public safety to affordability. These are all consequences of just poor policies that are all politically and financially driven. I'm not bought. And many will tell you, I'm a bit controversial even at the legislature because I don't always vote as my party asks me to, because my community is telling me otherwise. And I have to be true to the community I serve because I live there. I have to see you at the bodega. I have to see you at the laundromat. I have to see you. And it's not because I see you. I owe it to you. You entrusted me with your vote. So entrust me with your vote and know that I will always fight for you.
Well, thank you for coming on here. And how can people support? Where should they go to say, hey, I want to help knock on doors. I want to help get the word out.
Sure, they can come down to my office. I'm here on West Main Street, and it was important for me to be in this area. It's the heart of the district, if you will, and it's also in a historic area, which is the Susan B. Anthony and the home of the 12th Amendment. So this is so much history, and I'm excited about being in this area here. In the past, I've served in the Northeast Quadrant, and we've done great things in the Northeast Quadrant. I want to continue to expand the work that we're doing. But come on down. You could also call me at 281-2540. It's my personal number, open to the community. And you could visit the website at votemercedes2026.com. I'm accessible and I'm open to everyone, unlike many others that are not. So that is my commitment to the community, that good or bad, or you're upset at me or you're happy with me, I'll sit down and have a conversation with you. I don't skirt conversations, particularly difficult ones.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Yep.
and it was good.
Take care.
Yes, ma'am. Yep. I'm Jeffrey Rogers, and you're watching GSL News. You can find out more information about her on all our platforms on GSL News, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, take care.